What is up? What is good in your world? Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Matt Perry. Great to have you back with us. We've got a lot to talk about, and just like the ponies coming out of the gate at Pimlico, we're going to take it down the stretch of your weekend. We'll jump right into the conversation about the BCS making its final stand. We'll discuss SportsCenter needing to tweak its model of operations, and we'll preview the weekend ahead in both basketball and in interleague play in baseball by keying in on a couple of matchups that you might have overlooked. You know the drill. Turn the player up a little bit louder as we get ready to go to work. You're in the madhouse. As the days of spring wind down and we start to drive toward the days of summer, the NBA season is winding down and the Major League Baseball season is just starting to hit its stride. The NBA playoffs right now currently sit in the conference semifinals, while baseball season is in the midst of its first weekend of interleague play. Surprisingly, there are a couple of intriguing matchups in interleague play this season that one would not have expected when the baseball season started off. Take, for example, the Baltimore Orioles and Washington Nationals this weekend. At the start of the season, nobody would have picked either team to be in the forefront of their division. The Nationals were considered a strong contender in the NL East, but were not given much credit after the Atlanta Braves and Philadelphia Phillies. The Baltimore Orioles were written as a cast-off behind the strength of the Tampa Bay Rays, New York Yankees, and Boston Red Sox. However, the script is very much different as both the Phillies and the Red Sox are in the basement of their divisions, and both the Nationals and the Orioles are on the top of their division. This is a meaningful game in the city of Baltimore and in the city of Washington as both teams battle for supremacy over the Beltway. Nobody would have expected the Washington Nationals to have this much national staying power, but with the addition of Bryce Harper into the everyday lineup, the Nationals have an ability to be a big-time player on the national market, while the Baltimore Orioles, on the other hand, struggle to maintain national prominence with the addition of several young key players such as Adam Jones and Jake Arrieta and Matt Wieters. Both these teams in the Nationals and the Orioles do have staying power long term. The question is, can both teams withstand it through the majority of the summer? It's good news for the Beltway if both teams can, but you've got to figure that only one team is going to have staying power for the rest of the summer. I give that strength to the Nationals based on their overall pitching staff and better lineup suited for the long haul. Another interesting matchup, of course, is that of the Boston Red Sox and the Philadelphia Phillies. Both teams right now are absolutely struggling and can make no mistake about it, struggled out of the starting gate. However, these are the two most fiercest and loyal fan bases in all of baseball, and of course you add in the addition of Jonathan Papelbon facing his longtime teammates in the Red Sox. The Phillies picked up the win in Game 1 last night on the strength of a Papelbon save. However, the Red Sox would certainly like to answer back and win the series to send Papelbon a message that they are better without him. The second matchup and third and final matchup that we'll talk about is that of the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Detroit Tigers. Justin Verlander was dominant in Game 1, going 8 1/3 innings without allowing a hit. Pittsburgh has certainly struggled over recent years to remain prominent and pertinent in the National League, being a strong contender last season in the divisional race, at one point leading the way. However, this is a message this weekend that they can send to not only the National League, but the entire world of baseball, that they should be taken quite seriously. They, much like the Orioles, have a very young team, and as soon as they start to win, people will start to take them seriously. The Tigers, on the other hand, were a team that leapt out of the starting blocks and looked like nobody was going to be able to catch them in the AL Central. Since then, however, they have rocketed back down into central orbit and seem human. However, their pitching performance from Verlander last night proves why they are a strong contender to not only win the AL Central, but to be the AL representative in the World Series. Time will tell, and this is a very intriguing matchup. Time will tell, and we'll talk about it on Monday, recapping everything. Of course, basketball is essentially the focus right now for the majority of sports fans. A lot of focus this weekend will be given to the city of Los Angeles, which plays host to one half of the overall sports in the world right now. Of course, the Clippers and Lakers are both in the semifinals of the Western Conference, and the Kings are a game away from getting into the Stanley Cup. LA has certainly gone sports crazy, but the Clippers can do themselves no good if they continue to fall behind the San Antonio Spurs, as the Spurs look to go up and essentially put the Clippers on the back burner going back to San Antonio. We'll talk about it on Monday where we sit, but this is a fun time for sports fans. With the anticipated arrival of a 14 playoff to determine the national championship in 2014, college football is getting set to enter a new world order. The SEC and Big 12 staked out a big chunk of real estate in that world on Friday by announcing a 5-year agreement for their champions to meet on a January 1st bowl game that will be determined at a later date. The first game will be held on January the 1st, 2015. If one or both champions are in the 14 playoff, then another deserving team from each of their conferences would get the slot. In the 14 years of the BCS, either the SEC or the Big 12 champion has been in the title game an impressive 11 times. They've even met twice for the BCS title itself, the first time coming in 2008 when Florida and Oklahoma met up, the second time a year later in 2009 when Alabama and Texas hooked up. The relationship between the SEC and the Big 12 will essentially mirror that of the Big 10 and Pac-12, whose champions play in the Rose Bowl if they are not already committed to the BCS championship game. There is no question about it that this move consolidates the power into those four conferences and puts the other two original BCS conferences, the ACC and Big East, in a much weaker position, almost relegating them to mid-major status. It'll also add fuel to the fire of speculation that ACC member Florida State should very strongly consider jumping to the Big 12 if such an invitation is offered. The Sugar Bowl has hosted the SEC champion since 1976, and one would have to believe it is the number one option to host this new bowl. This cannot be seen as good news for the Fiesta Bowl, which of course hosts the Big 12 champion and has since the BCS began back in 1998. So the question has to be raised, why did the SEC and Big 12 want to do this? The answer is simple: to protect each other and to increase the likelihood of a quality matchup in the bowl game. Under the current BCS format, their champions were not guaranteed a spot in the big game, but the opponent on the other side was always an uncertainty. In 2007, number 5 Georgia faced off against Hawaii in the Sugar Bowl, while in 2009, Florida hooked up with Cincinnati. Both games were absolute blowouts. This agreement guarantees that the SEC Big 12 matchup is the New Year's Day Bowl. If a 14 playoff had been in place last season, this game would have hosted the number 6 Arkansas Razorbacks, whose only 2 losses on the year were to number 1 LSU and to number 2 Alabama, and then number 8 Kansas State, who would come in at 10-2 out of the Big 12. There is currently an SEC Big 12 matchup already in the bowl season in place with the Cotton Bowl, which gets the number 2 team from the Big 12 and either the number 4 or number 5 pick from the SEC. It is not known how this agreement will affect that bowl. Which bowl will actually host this SEC Big 12 matchup will be determined after the structure of the new 14 playoff has been determined. The BCS commissioners are scheduled to meet again on June the 20th and are expected to settle on a format at that time. The SEC will determine its bowl agreements after that. This issue has not been resolved, but there is support from the Big 10 and others to use a rotation of the current BCS bowls already in place: the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl, and the Fiesta Bowl as semifinal sites in the 14 playoff. So the question then becomes, what if the Sugar Bowl is chosen to host this SEC Big 12 game, but is also in the rotation for a national semifinal? The SEC and Big 12 agreement also signals the beginning of an anticipated end to the automatic qualifying status in the postseason. Under the old BCS Bowls, the champions of each of the 6 major conferences were guaranteed a spot in a BCS game. In the New World Order, the conferences will strike their own deals with each of the bowls. The SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, and Big 10 are already now set. The SEC has an agreement already in place with the Orange Bowl, while the Big East has no such deal. The irony of this very agreement is not long ago the conferences were clashing swords as Texas A&M and Missouri were getting set to leave the Big 12 in favor of the SEC. But of course, in today's college football's world, an enemy today could be a business partner tomorrow. This agreement, which gives the Big 12, which seemed to be on life support not less than a year ago, greater stability moving forward. That is known as the worldwide leader in sports, or ESPN, has seen its bedrock show of SportsCenter start to go a little bit stale. In order to look for the blame of this issue, one needs to look no further than ESPN itself. SportsCenter was and still is the flagship program for ESPN, but the problem is it has not undergone any radical or systematic changes since it's made its debut 2 decades ago. 2 things have changed for SportsCenter, one being set design and the second being the revolving door of anchors that have sat at the desk and delivered the highlights. With technology constantly pushing itself into the forefront, I know that if the Red Sox, Patriots, or Celtics win or lose, I can pull up the scores wherever I am, that I don't need to stay up until 11 o'clock. And shockingly, I can even pull up the highlights on either my iPad or my phone. I am no longer at the mercy of SportsCenter. The new radical trend of loyal ESPN watchers seems to be the shift toward what every other television network has seen in the past couple of years, the effective use of TiVo. If somebody were to TiVo Pardon the Interruption and Around the Horn at 5 and 5:30, well, that person would be caught up on the news of the day in less than the amount of time needed to watch the 6 o'clock SportsCenter. Around the Horn and Pardon the Interruption are 2 shows that are built on the interaction between the host and the viewer, parlaying that into chemistry between those on set and those on the couch, the very essence of what SportsCenter was built on. That is exactly what Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann were able to do and command in the SportsCenter's heyday at the 11 o'clock hour, by each playing off each other's strengths and bringing a different mindset of wit and humor to the highlights. One turned in to see the scores and the highlights, but mainly one did not want to miss the cultural epicenter that was the 11 o'clock SportsCenter, hosted normally by Patrick and Olbermann. ESPN, on the other hand, has held the wide-standing belief that no one man is bigger than the show, and when push came to shove, that forced both Olbermann and Patrick to leave the network with a great distaste in their mouths. Since then, ESPN has tried everything under the sun to try and duplicate the one-of-a-kind. I'd be very much more likely to tune in to the 11 o'clock SportsCenter if I was assured that I would be treated to a Scott Van Pelt and Stuart Scott pairing on SportsCenter. But the network has been reluctant to go back in the partnership direction. The problem that ESPN will start to face is how can it attract viewers back to the program when there's a growing sense of I can find it on Twitter in a fraction of the time that it takes me to find it on SportsCenter. And why getting a highlight is still the ultimate success of any sports team or any sports fan, how many really times can you sit through watching a Royals and Astros highlight and still be enthralled? While other programs do better numbers with its reruns and repeats, SportsCenter's repeats and reruns feel more like a rehash of material that I could find elsewhere with a completely different message each time out. During the baseball season, for example, I can gain the majority of the news of the day by watching Baseball Tonight at 10 p.m. and feel interested and informed. This is due in large part to the fact that I know either Steve Berthume or Carl Ravitch is going to be hosting the show, and both bring different strengths to the show as host. Berthume is the funny one who is able to make a Royals-Astros highlight enjoyable to get through, while Ravitch is the one I want talking and leading a discussion with more serious topics. By 11 o'clock, I'm fully caught up on everything that I would need to know, and I can call it a night. ESPN, unlike other networks, will never go stale simply because sports are constantly changing and therefore will always have a market in terms of ESPN. However, that does not mean that one needs to change programming on ESPN, and SportsCenter certainly needs to make changes to attract its loyal viewers. Like a home run in baseball, we are up and out of here. We hope you enjoyed the show. This is the Madman himself, Matt Perry, and you've been listening to the Madhouse. As always, you can find us on Twitter by following us or tweeting at us. We are the Madhouse 750 on Twitter. Go ahead and get at us if you have something you want us to talk about. We'd love to hear from you. But until Monday, we hope you come back and see us safely when we'll recap everything you need to know about sports and popular culture. Until that point in time, you are released from the house. Hugs and hand pounds, everybody.